Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to the big news. The topic for today's discussion: Niti Aayog Vice Chairman resigns. What is the structure and role of Niti Aayog? In this backdrop, we will try and understand why was the Niti Aayog established? What is the structure of the Niti Aayog? What are the objectives of the Niti Aayog? What are the criticisms with respect to this institution and way forward with respect to Niti Aayog? What is the context? We recently had the resignation of Rajiv Kumar, who was the vice chairman of Niti Aayog. The government has now appointed Suman K. Berry as the vice chairman of Niti Aayog. Now, the first question is, why was Niti Aayog brought into picture? That is because we had one of the institutions called as the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission as an institution was created because of the Nehru government. The Nehru government set up and chaired the commission to map out a developmental path for India's agrarian economy. So India, after it got its independence, became a socialistic regime. We also wanted to import multiple concepts from the Soviet Union as well. One such concept that we wanted to bring in is called as the Planning Commission, where this Planning Commission had a simple role of formulating the 5-year plans. But there were certain issues with respect to the Planning Commission. What were these issues? It started emerging as a parallel cabinet with the Prime Minister as its head. When we speak about India, India is a federal structure. What do we have? We have the central government. We also have the state governments as well. And when it comes to the state governments, what was happening? All the issues with respect to the state governments was directly being discussed by the Planning Commission. In fact, the commission also had the power to allocate central funds to the states. The cabinet of the central government also had an inferior role in comparison to the Planning Commission. As a result, the Modi government realizes that there is a lot of power wielded by the Planning Commission. It was also sanctioning money to the state governments. It was acting as a parallel to the established cabinet. But this Planning Commission was not a constitutional body. It was neither a statutory body, and it was passed by executive resolution and was wielding a lot of power. In fact, when you go back to the year 2012, it had also spent more than 30 lakhs for the renovation of the toilets in the Planning Commission headquarters. Looking at all these issues, the Modi government realizes that this particular institution is a relic of the past. What we require is not a socialistic regime model. What we require is one of the model which supports the free market economics. So basically, what was the Planning Commission? The Planning Commission was an institution established not by a constitution, not by a statutory body, but by an executive resolution, and it was wielding a lot of power. So we required one of the institutions which in line will be a think tank and will not be wielding so much of power. So the Modi government came up with what is called as the Niti Aayog. Because there were issues with respect to the Planning Commission, what we today have is called as the Niti Aayog. The government replaced the Planning Commission with a new institution named as Niti Aayog, which stands for National Institution for Transforming India. The Niti Aayog was formed via a resolution of the Union Cabinet on Jan 1st, 2015. What do we mean by it? When we speak about establishment of the institution, what we have is the constitutional bodies. The UPSC is a constitutional body. The Election Commission is a constitutional body. So all those institutions and authorities find a mention in the constitution are called as the constitutional bodies. Then we have the statutory bodies. What are these statutory bodies? These are the bodies or the authorities which are created by the law of the parliament. Let's say, for example, we have the Enforcement Directorate. This is not mentioned in the constitution, but we have the Enforcement Directorate which is passed by the law and it derives its power from the law of the country. So that is what is called as statutory bodies. But when it comes to the Niti Aayog, it was passed by a resolution of the Union Cabinet. So remember, it is neither a constitutional body, it is neither a statutory body, but it happens to be a body established by cabinet resolution. What are the functions of Niti Aayog? It is the primary policy think tank of the Government of India, providing directional and policy inputs. Apart from designing strategic and long-term policies and programs for the Government of India, Niti Aayog also provides relevant technical advice to the center, states and union territories. So what is the difference between Niti Aayog as well as the Planning Commission? When it comes to the Niti Aayog, it is just acting as a think tank, but when it comes to the Planning Commission, it was imposing the 5-year plans, it was also allocating resources to the economic targets, which happened to be the state. When it comes to the Niti Aayog, it has far greater involvement of the states, but when it comes to the Niti Aayog, it had what is called as the top-down approach, where it decided, and only thing that the states had was to listen to the planning commission. But in Niti Aayog, the states have far more leverage, they have far more independence, and they would be able to give their input to the Niti Aayog as well. Now let's look at the structure of the Niti Aayog. The structure involves the Prime Minister of India as the chairperson, Governing Council comprising the Chief Minister of all states and Lieutenant Governors of Union Territories, and we have the regional councils which will be formed to address specific issues and contingencies impacting more than one state or a region. Let's say, for example, we have the West region, or we have the East region, or the Southern region. If there are more than one state which have an issue in one of the regions, those states that have an issue will be brought together. They would be discussing what their issues are, and ultimately a conclusion and a solution would be provided as part of the regional council. Expert specialists and practitioners with relevant domain knowledge as special invitees nominated by the Prime Minister, and the full-time organizational framework will comprise of, in addition to the Prime Minister as chairperson, vice chairperson to be appointed by Prime Minister. Members will be full-time members, part-time members, maximum of 2 from leading universities, research organizations and other institutions in the ex officio capacity. Part-time members will be on a rotational basis. Ex officio members, maximum of 4 members of the Union Council of Ministers to be nominated by the Prime Minister. Chief Executive Officer to be appointed by the Prime Minister for a fixed tenure in the rank of Secretary to the Government of India, and we will also have a secretariat which will be necessary for conducting the activities of the Niti Aayog. What are the objectives of Niti Aayog? To evolve a shared vision of national development priority sector and strategies with active involvement of the states in the light of national objectives. Thereby, it wants to promote what is called as cooperative federalism and competitive federalism. On one side, it brings together all the states, and it also pushes for innovation and competition among the states so that there is cooperation, and at the same time there is competitive federalism amongst the states. To foster cooperative federalism through structured support initiatives and mechanisms with the states on a continuous basis, recognizing that strong states make a strong nation, to ensure on areas that are specifically referred to it that the interest of national security are incorporated in economic strategy and policy, to design strategic and long-term policy and program frameworks and initiatives and monitor their progress and their efficiency. The lessons learned through this monitoring and feedback will be used for making innovative improvements, including necessary mid-course corrections. What does this mean? Let's say the Niti Aayog has come up with a policy program. This policy will have a pilot project. So the pilot project will be monitored constantly. In case there are any impediments or issues and concerns with respect to this project, the same will be taken up. It will be evaluated, and if changes have to be incorporated, the same will be introduced as part of this policy. To provide advice and encourage partnerships between key stakeholders, national and international like-minded think tanks, as well as education and policy research, to create a knowledge, innovation and entrepreneurial support system through a collaborative community of national, international experts, practitioners and other partners, to offer a platform for resolution of intersectoral, interdepartmental issues in order to accelerate the implementation of developmental agenda. This is to bring all the stakeholders together, the stakeholders being the government, the private and also the civil society as well. So basically bringing in the multiple stakeholders so that in case there are any issues, the same can be addressed as well. In case there are international models and paradigms, the same can be imported so that the innovation can be regrouped in India. To actively monitor and evaluate the implementation of programs and initiatives, including identification of the needed resources so as to strengthen the probability of success and scope of delivery. What are the criticisms with respect to Niti Aayog? Niti Aayog is a non-constitutional, non-statutory body. Since it is non-constitutional, non-statutory body passed by an executive resolution, solution. Let's say there is a new political party which forms the government in the near future. In that case, this entire Niti Aayog will be diluted. It can also be stripped of its powers, so all the reforms initiated will go for a toss. It has no role in influencing public or the private investment. As we know, Niti Aayog is a think tank. It is just an advisory body. It is the government which has to listen to it. It is the government which has to implement this particular process. But in this case, the government in number of ways may also object to the Niti Aayog suggestions. In fact, the Niti Aayog recommendations, if it is not being accepted by the government, how will the private entities listen to it? So it has no role in influencing the public or the private investments, as most of the reforms initiated or recommendations given by the Niti Aayog are just voluntary, advisory in nature, and are not mandatory. It does not seem to have any influence in policy making with long-term consequences. For instance, demonetization and the goods and services tax. We have the government which should ideally take some of the recommendations from the Niti Aayog, but in some of the cases where it is having a long-term consequences for the entire economy, like the GST and the demonetization, the Niti Aayog was not consulted. Niti Aayog is supposed to be a think tank. This implies that while generating new ideas, it maintains a respectable intellectual distance from the government of the day. Instead, what we see is uncritical praise of the government. So if we are speaking about the think tank, it has to be reformative in nature. It has to stay neutral. So it has to praise when need be, and at the same time, it also has to criticize the government when need be. For example, the demonetization, some accuse that was not a successful move. Raghuram Rajanji has also said that it was not a successful move. So in that case, Niti Aayog should have criticized the government. But in all cases, in most of the cases, the government is only praised by the Niti Aayog, and there is no criticism faced by the government when it comes to the viewpoint of the Niti Aayog. And as a result, what we have to do is to bring large-scale reforms when it comes to the Niti Aayog. So the need of the hour for the Niti Aayog is to become a much better organization than compared to the Planning Commission. So going forward, Niti Aayog should not just be about think tank giving the recommendations, but it should also focus on implementation, is what is this article all about. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.